Well, that was totally ridiculous and also kind of awesome. So Happy Death Day to You sees Jessica Roth return to her starring role from the original Happy Death Day, in which she is caught in another time loop, reliving the same day over and over, getting killed over and over again. And in this movie, she realizes the reason behind it, why this keeps happening to her, and that there's been a lot more going on than she had originally thought, and she sets out to stop this from ever happening to her or anyone else ever again. Once again, this movie revolves around the main character Tree, played by Jessica Roth, and she really steals the show. She is incredible. She's someone who's on the rise for sure. Everyone will know her name in a couple of years in the horror world and in Hollywood in general. She is perfect in this movie. She's the person who has definitely made the first two movies, and without her, they would be basically nothing. And she goes on a very interesting character arc in this movie. It's another good one, even though it's quite a bit different from the first. In the first movie, she had a really good character arc. She started off as someone who was narcissistic, self-centered, didn't really care about anyone, was mean to everyone, didn't care about anything, and then all of a sudden, well, not all of a sudden, she goes on this slow, gradual journey, and at the end of the movie, she's someone who's a lot nicer, caring about people, and just not as self-centered, and a lot more just loving life and enjoying herself a lot more than she was originally, and not looking back, and just kind of realizing what life is really about. In this movie, she has a bit of a different one, because at the start, she's the character that we knew at the end of the first movie. And in this one, she goes on an arc that is a lot more about moral dilemmas, about choosing between something that you've missed and have really wanted back. And when it does come back to you, you're like, oh, wow, I want it to stay this way forever. I wish it would have never happened what happened, and I want to go back to the way it was, no matter what the cost. But there is a big cost. I'm not going to get into spoilers here, not going to get into specifics, but basically, in this movie, Tree faces a serious moral dilemma towards the end of the movie, whether to stay in one version of her world or to go back to her old one. And it's a really tough choice, and you understand why, and you feel for her going through this journey. And when she ultimately makes the choice, it's really sad, but it's also quite satisfying at the same time, because she realizes that without the things that have happened throughout her life, she wouldn't be the person that she is now, and that helps her make her choice. This movie has a surprising amount of heart, especially compared to the first one, kind of along the same lines as the difficult choices she has to make when she's talking to certain people about when she's about to make these choices, and kind of she realizes the last time she's going to talk to this person or those people, and it hits you. It really does, because this character has been on a very interesting journey throughout the first two movies, and when she is faced with these decisions and she has to confront these people in the way that you know where it's going, so you understand why this is so tough for her to do, and it really hits you. Some really good heartfelt moments in this movie, and that was a bit surprising, something that I definitely liked, because they landed so well since we know and like this character so much. This movie also has a ton of humor, and for the most part, it really works. This is not a horror movie like the first one was. It goes almost entirely away from the horror genre. The first one was very much a horror movie. I mean, it certainly had aspects of comedy, and it was kind of cheesy and over the top, but this one takes that over the topness to a whole new level, and because of that, it pretty much ditches the horror aspect altogether, except for just a few things at the beginning of the movie, which, to be honest, didn't work very well. There was some very cliche horror stuff that happened at the beginning of the movie, where someone will be walking around and looking in a certain place, and they think that's where the killer is, and they're not, and then someone else comes behind them, and then boom, the killer's really right there. real horror cliches. So I'm glad that they actually kind of went away from that, because the other stuff, for the most part, worked really well. This is a movie that knows exactly what it is. Maybe even more so than the first one. This movie is totally bonkers. It goes to the next level with all the supernatural science ridiculous stuff going on, and it gives a real explanation as to why this whole thing even started happening in the first movie. And that's something that was a bit of a negative to me in the first one, is it gave no explanation whatsoever as to why. And a lot of people were fine without an explanation. I think the explanation in this movie that they gave is fine. It's fine, and it works for what it is. And this movie is very much a science fiction kind of, it's almost a science fiction adventure. It's almost more like Back to the Future 2, more so than a horror movie or anything else. And they even call that out in the movie, similar to the first one, what they did with Groundhog Day, because they play with these different realities and these different versions of people. And even there's a scene where there's two of the same person in the same place, and they really play with this whole, do you really actually want to change the past thing? Maybe things are better off the way they are, because otherwise you wouldn't be who you are today. And I think they did a pretty good job with what they were doing with this movie, and they knew exactly what they were doing. Look, this movie is corny as hell. It's really cheesy. Even, it's definitely more cheesy than the first movie. It goes so far with the cliches and the just over-the-top speeches from someone. Oh, we have to do this, and this is how we're gonna do it. And you're like, okay, that's that's a little much. I get that a lot of this movie is meta, but I think sometimes, even though I enjoyed most of the ridiculousn's, sometimes they went a little too far with it. And I'm not going to get into specifics with that, but they had a lot of montages, a lot of just ridiculous things happening that it completely takes you out of the movie, and you realize that this is not actual people. That's how meta they get with it sometimes, and that can be a little bit off-putting when they go so far with that stuff. But that stuff did work better than the few minutes of horror that we got towards the beginning of the movie. So I guess it was probably a good thing that they went in this direction, completely different direction from the first. I have no idea if there's going to be a sequel, and I have no idea where they would go with it, but I would definitely watch it, because Jessica Roth is awesome, and these movies they're fun. That's the best way for me to characterize it. These two movies have been very fun and charming, and just entertaining watch for basically anyone. I don't know how anyone could not enjoy these movies despite some of the really dumb stuff that'll happen. So overall, this movie is a fun, funny, adventurous, ridiculous ride that is a really fun ride to go on, even though there are some really dumb things, and it can be quite predictable, especially compared to the first movie. The mystery part of the first movie was what really drew me in, and that it didn't really apply here. It was more about the science fiction aspect as opposed to the horror mystery, and kind of figuring out how to stop this thing forever, and picking and choosing between what you want to be real, and this whole dilemma of, do I want things perfect, or do I want them the way that they really are, that makes me who I am? So I enjoyed this movie for what it was. Definitely, like the first one, it's not great cinema, not anything that's going to be like Oscar nominated. It's not groundbreaking, but just another fun watch. And like the first one, I'm going to give Happy Death Day 2U 7 out of 10. So there you have it, guys. Have you seen Happy Death Day 2U yet? If so, what do you think? Drop a comment below. And if you enjoyed this video, make sure to hit that thumbs up button. If you're new here, go ahead and subscribe if you want to see future content. Hit the notification bell so you get notified when I post a video. Guys, spread the word, and I will see you soon.